Okay, so we welcome Professor Bahera, His Grace Leela Purushottam Prabhu for taking this wonderful seminar series on Bhagvat, Sankhya and Modern Scientific Worldview forward. So today will be although this is a very long series, but we will be concluding this on today. So so we welcome Prabhuji to start the program. Thank you. So Professor Bahera.
So you are ready? Okay, welcome everyone. I'm going to take you through the chapter 26 of third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, what I am going to help you today is that how do you take terms that are there in Bhagavad Sankhya, how to properly understand. One of the things that you have to realize when we talk about tattva is always subtle. So never try to understand tattva in terms of gross. More subtler, that is better, representation of tattva, and the ultimate tattva is the subtlest. So this is something that we have to know, that that which is perceived to gross material senses are certainly not the that are, we can talk about in terms of gross experience, but they are not the tattva means the truth. Truth is always subtler than our experience. So let's read it and enjoy. This is, I would like all of you to enjoy.
Professor Bahera, sorry for interrupting you. Professor Bahera, sorry for interrupting you, sir. Your voice is not coming clearly. Maybe the mic is little far away from the mouth. Mic
nahi laga hai.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, sir. Now it's comfortable.
Okay, thank you for letting me know that I spoke. So what I was telling, truth, the shape or the structure of truth is always subtler than our gross experience. So we need to realize this, and that is why the seers of truth, they always tries to transcend the gross platform. More subtler they turn out in terms of their experience, they can only perceive the truth. Okay, so now please enjoy as I'm reading, and if you have any question at any point of time, you can unmute yourself and speak. That is no problem. The personality of Godhead, Kapila, continued. My dear mother, because some of you may not be knowing, this Bhagavad Sankhya that we are talking, this was being spoken by Lord Kapila, the son of Kardama and Devahuti. So, and after Lord Kapila was burned, Kardama Muni took sannyas, and Lord Kapila is teaching his mother. So he's saying, my dear mother, now I shall describe unto you the different categories of the absolute truth, knowing which any person can be released from the influence of the modes of material nature. So very important. We all want to be. So you really want to be subtler, so then you should not be affected by three modes. This is knowledge is the ultimate perfection of self-realization. I shall explain that knowledge unto you, by which the knots of attachment to the material world is cut. So basically, knowledge must give us freedom. It doesn't matter. So when we say something is scientific knowledge, but that knowledge is not cutting or not liberating me from my attachment to the material world, the illusion that I am covered by, so then that cannot be knowledge. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Soul. He has no beginning. He is transcendental to material modes of nature and beyond the existence of this material world. He is perceivable everywhere because he is self-effulgent. And by his self-effulgent luster, the entire creation is maintained. So it is a very important point. He's saying that the absolute truth, although he is, all-pervading and appears to be hidden, but those who are seeker of truth can feel his presence because he is self-effulgent. And the fact is that we don't experience his presence. From this particular verse is very clear that we are situated in very gross state. So one of the very important aspects of a scientist to enter into the realm of subtle existence. Okay. As his pastime, that Supreme Personality Godhead, the greatest of great, accepted the subtle material energy, which is invested with three material modes of nature and which is related with Vishnu. Divided into varieties by her threefold modes of material nature, threefold modes, material nature creates the form of living entities. And the living entities, seeing this, are illusioned by the knowledge covering feature of illusory energy. So the forms, that means we are seeing there are 8.4 million different apartments. These apartments were created by the three modes of material nature. And it is said that the living entities, seeing that form, so how they see that form, that's something very interesting, confidential. I'm going to speak about that later. So they are illusioned by knowledge covering feature of illusory energy, by which they accepted these forms to be real. Because of his forgetfulness, the transcendental living entity accepts the influence of material energy as his field of activity, and thus actuated, he wrongly applies the activities to himself. So activities are performed by the three modes, but the living entities consider themselves to be the actor. And so anyhow, these are things that most of you know. Let me go a little faster because otherwise we'll be very slow. Ram Singh, what is your question? Yes, Ram Singh, you want to ask a question? Unmute yourself and ask. Yeah, please go ahead.
I think he lowered
Okay.
his hand, so he's.
All right, so then I will continue. So material consciousness is the cause of one's conditional life, in which conditions are enforced upon the living entity by the material energy. Although spirit soul does not do anything and is transcendental to such activities, is thus affected by conditional life. So the cause of conditioned soul's material body and senses presiding deities, the demigod, is the material nature. This is understood by learned man. The feeling of happiness and distress by the soul, who is transcendental by nature, are caused by the spirit soul himself. So, Devavati said, O Supreme Personality Godhead, kindly explain the characteristics of the Supreme Person and his energy, for both of these are the causes of this manifest and unmanifest creation. The Supreme Personality Godhead said, the unmanifested eternal combination of three modes is the cause of manifest state and is called Pradhan. It is called Prakriti when in the manifested stage of existence. So when the energy, material energy, is unmanifest, inactive, neutral, is known as Pradhan. And it becomes Prakriti when they are impregnated with the unlimited jivas and they are provided with variegated apartments or bodies. Then it becomes Prakriti. The same energy now becomes active. The aggregate elements, namely the 5 gross elements, 5 subtle elements, the 4 internal senses, the 5 senses for gathering knowledge, and 5 outward organs of action, are known as the Pradhan. There are 5 gross elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, and ether. There are also 5 subtle elements: smell, taste, color, touch, and sound. And as I have told you, smell, taste, color, touch, sound, these are all tanmatras, and they delude us. We are attracted by smell, taste, color, touch, and sound. And we try to enjoy these 5 tanmatras. We get entangled. A scientist, if he gets entangled by smell, taste, colors, touch, and sound, is no more a scientist. Only those who can remain neutral, unbiased, unaffected by smell, taste, color, touch, and sound, they will be qualified to understand what is earth, water, air, fire, ether. As I have told you, many devotees, they don't understand what is earth, water, air, fire, ether. I again and again say, earth, water, air, fire, ether are all pervading throughout the universe. Brahma's body is also made up of earth, water, air, fire, ether, so also ours. But the beauty is that Brahma's body lives for or exists for 311 trillion 40 billion years, and our body at max 100 years, earthly years. And the earthly planet, people think this is made up of earth. Some people also say sun planet is made up of fire. This is wrong. All planetary systems are made up of these 5 things. In all planetary systems, smell, taste, color, touch, sound exist. In all planetary systems, smell, taste, color, touch, and sound bewilders everyone. Even Indra is bewildered by smell, taste, color, touch, and sound. Of course, his level of bewilderment, our level of bewilderment are different. Even in a very subtle level, these tanmatras can bewilder anyone. That is why these concepts, when we read, we must have some idea how to become, first of all, independent, of these elements before we can see these elements. To be able to see this element, the scientist or the seer or seeker of truth must have a very good uh, ability or qualification to remain sense controlled. That means his senses must be controlled. Anybody who is victim of their senses cannot understand these elements. So, the senses for acquiring knowledge, the organs for action, number 10, namely the auditory sense, the sense of taste, the tactile sense, the sense of light, sense of smell, the active organ for speaking, the acting organ for working, those for traveling, generating, and evacuating. So, these are different components of any organism, from ant to higher beings like Indra. So that you have these 5 senses, knowledge acquiring senses, and the object of knowledge acquiring senses are smell, taste, touch, form, and sound. So 5 knowledge acquiring senses, 5 tanmatras, object of senses, that makes 10. Then 5 working senses, locomotion, manipulation, evacuation, and that working organ that is meant for speaking, or and so that is your hand, leg. Hand is manipulation, leg for locomotion, and the speaking organ for speaking. So 3, and then 2 evacuation, anus and genital. So these are 5 working senses. So that makes 15. And then you have senses, 5 senses. No, I have already told about senses. Senses and sense object, that is done. So that is 15. So total 15. Now mind is 16, and then 5 the elements that make up of this body: earth, water, air, fire, ether. So that is 5. So 20 plus mind is 21, intelligence 22, and false ego 23, and 24 is the sum total of unmanifest energy. So that is how there are 24 elements. The internal and subtle senses are experienced as having 4 aspects in the shape of mind, intelligence, ego, and contaminated consciousness. So here the 4th one is contaminated consciousness, the false consciousness, polluted consciousness. Distinction between them can be made only by different functions, since they represent different characteristics. All these are considered the qualified Brahman. The mixed element, which is known as time, is counted as 25th element. So there are 24, time makes it 25th. The influence of Supreme Personality Godhead is felt in the time factor, which causes fear of death due to the false ego of the deluded soul, which contacted material nature. This time you can understand in terms of, I think I spoke about this time. time gives us justice or punishment, reward, whichever you can call. It gives the judgment because time is the witness of all our actions. When you violate laws of God, we are penalized by the time. So when that penalty I have to pay, only time would reveal. So we can't actually tell the time, no, you give me this punishment at this time or at this time. No. Just like if you violate the traffic law, you are made to pay the challan. Similarly, time makes us to pay for our misdeeds. And that is why he says the influence of the absolute truth is felt in the time factor, because time can change the situation within no time. Okay. My dear mother, O daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, the time factor, as I have explained, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom the creation begins as a result of agitation of neutral on a manifested nature. So what is this agitation? Agitation is the living entities, revolt against the laws of nature. By exhibiting his potencies, the Supreme Personality Godhead adjusts all these different elements, keeping himself within as super soul and without as time. So as a super soul, he is with us within our body, which we cannot perceive, but we can perceive the super soul through the time factor, because you can see that in this material world, the happiness, they come according to its own sweet will, so also the distress. The so-called happiness and distress, the way they are bestowed or they are perceived, is all the manifestation of the time's intervention in our life. So sometime you are not expecting a happy situation and that would appear, and sometime without your expectation, distress would follow. By exhibiting his potency, the Supreme Personality Godhead adjusts all these different elements, keeping himself within as super soul without as time. After the Supreme Personality Godhead impregnates the material nature with his internal potency, material nature delivers the sum total of cosmic intelligence, which is known as Hiranmaya. This takes place in material nature when she is agitated by the destination of the conditioned soul. So soul, they have variegated level of consciousness based on their distance from the absolute truth. More they are farther from the absolute truth, the agitation is violent. And depending on how close they are or how far, the material nature becomes either violent or silent. So if all living entities, by a thought experiment, they accept the presence of the absolute truth and they accept the goal, that is to follow the law of God, then obviously this material existence will be full of silence. So this is something that we have to realize. Thus, after manifesting variegatedness, the effulgent Mahatattva, which contains all the universes within itself, who is the root of all cosmic manifestation, which is not destroyed at the time of annihilation, swallows the darkness that covered the effulgence at the time of dissolution. So the mode of goodness, which is the clear, sober status of understanding of personality of Godhead, which is generally called Vasudeva or consciousness, becomes manifest in the Mahatattva. So that is why I request all those who want to do research in Bhagavad Sankhya or any topic, first qualification is to attain the mode of goodness. Without mode of goodness, we cannot control our senses. And when we become victim of tanmatras, there is no way we can do science. Science means revealing the truth. So only a person who is unbound can reveal the truth. And the mode of goodness can help us to see the truth. So that is the beginning. And as I told, all of you have got some idea what is the nature of mode of goodness. Mode of goodness is that where we have a sense of detachment from everything. A scientist is most detached person. There should not be any attachment of any kind. So that's why we say neutrality is the basis for seeking the truth. When you come to a platform where you are in a state where neither you feel you are a male or a female, you are American or Indian, you are black or white. So that means when you become freed from all kind of designations, that's when you can be very sure that you have attained the state of goodness. After the manifestation of Mahatattva, these features appear simultaneously as water in its natural state before coming in contact with earth is clear, sweet, and unruffled. So the characteristic traits of pure consciousness are complete serenity, clarity, and freedom from distraction. So this is very, very important for us to recognize that the pure consciousness, the state of pure consciousness is that of complete serenity, clarity, and freedom from distraction. And I hope that you remember what are distractions that we have. These 5 tanmatras, gross level distraction. Even there are subtle level distraction, let's not, whatever, but the primary form of distraction is smell, taste, sound, form, touch. The material ego springs up from the Mahatattva, which evolved from the Lord's own energy. The material ego is endowed predominantly with the active power of 3 kinds: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And it is from these 3 types of material ego that the mind, the senses of perception, the organs of action, the gross elements evolve. So what is ego? Ego means the identity. Like, for example, what makes you to learn? What makes you you are a machine, and there is a machine like tractor or an automobile, rocket. These are all machine. What makes difference? What is the distinction between you, when I'm referring to you as a this living body? This living body is also machine. So how this machine is different from the other machine? Ego. This machine has an identity. And this machine recognizes for its survival, it learns. What makes you learn? What makes you to fight or to strive for survival? A machine, you shoot a new car is not coming and telling you, oh, don't shoot me, right? Whereas a living organism, it has this identity. So that identity is very, very important, because the existence is a false identity. Because material energy was unmanifest, and first feature of material energy to manifest within this material world is ego, its own identity. And that identity of I-ness, which we say I-ness, that I exist. So that is the cause of all other elements to manifest. And we will see that how this ego, the threefold ahankara. Why threefold? Because this ahankara, ego, can be in the mode of ignorance, mode of passion, and mode of goodness. And hence, this ahankara or ego, the identity, the source of gross elements. Because once you say that I exist, how do you establish your existence? So, to establish your existence, you would require certain other features. Okay, so we will see that how that very idea of original pseudo, these are all pseudo existence, because they are there, this ego manifests because the living entities, they want to establish their identity separate from Krishna. And because they want to establish their identity separate from Krishna, a false identity is created by the material nature. That means a jiva which can naturally see the all-pervading aspect of the absolute truth and can see itself as the divine energy of that absolute truth, but now wants to establish its own independent existence, which it doesn't have. And because of that, the first creation or the creative element is that it has to put on a dress, and that dress is false identity, and that is ahankara. And this identity can be in mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance, as well as mixture of all three. The source of gross elements, the senses and the mind, is identical with them because it is their cause. So it is known by the name of Sankarsana, who is directly Lord Ananta with 1,000 heads. This false ego is characterized as the doer, as an instrument, and as an effect simultaneously. It is the doer, it is an instrument, also the effect. Because it's the same energy becomes variegated. It is further characterized as serene, active, or dull according to how it is influenced by the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. From the false ego of goodness, another transformation takes place. So false ego of goodness, false ego of passion, false ego of ignorance. There are threefold identity. And here it says, false ego of goodness gives rise to mind. So that is, mind is the element in mode of goodness. Primarily, it is in mode of goodness. So the mind of the living entity is known by the name Lord Aniruddha, the supreme ruler of the senses. He possesses bluish black form resembling. So what you are seeing, although I'm just reading, you have to follow a parallel. What is parallel? One is there is Supreme Lord who is always self-effulgent, right? His presence is self-effulgent for any seeker of truth. But without him, nothing can operate. But Jiva doesn't want to surrender to this absolute truth. And it wants to create its own identity. So the Supreme or the absolute truth is creating false dresses for this Jiva. But ultimately, everything is connected to the absolute truth. So whether it is false ego, we saw false ego, the presiding deity is Sankarsana. That means everything, there is a connection. Similarly, mind is presiding deity, is Aniruddha. So what does it mean? That means these elements can be sanctified when they are connected to their presiding deity. When mind is connected to Aniruddha, the mind will remain freed from adulteration. So this is some, and this parallel will be there all through the description. By transformation of the false ego in passion, intelligence takes birth. So false ego, so there is false ego in passion, false ego in ignorance, false ego in goodness. False ego in goodness. So this transformation is mystical. You have to recognize. That is, I and me, we cannot transform false ego in goodness to mind. You and me, we cannot transform the false ego in passion to intelligence. Neither you and me, we can transform false ego in ignorance to sound. So there is one element that is called false ego in the beginning. And in the three different modes, there is transformative additional elements in the form of mind, intelligence, and sound. So these transformative elements happen. This is a mystical process. We cannot make it happen, right? We are not the controller, right? So this is where we have to be very, very careful what we can do, what we cannot do. So this is very, very important that these are all mystical transformations, and we cannot do it. So the function of intelligence are to help in ascertaining nature of objects when they come into view, and to help the senses. So we talked about mind, we talked about now intelligence. Doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory, and sleep, as determined by their different functions, are said to be the distinct characteristics of intelligence. So that's why doubt. Doubt is a sign of intelligence. Misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory and sleep. If you don't have a good sleep, then you will normally, for example, I'm in IIT and I have seen many students, they don't study before, and they study whole night. And sometimes what do? They don't even take rest. And when they go to the exam, many of the time they make mistakes. Although they have studied, they will make mistake because they have not taken proper rest. So this is a very good topic, sleep and memory. A good rest, if you will have good memory. If you have not taken a good rest, you will not have memory. So these are something that, when you talk about Bhagvat Sankhya, each one of these are aspects of research, right? So one of the very popular area now that has come called cognitive science, and we can look at in the different signals like biological signal, biosignals, whether it is EEG, ECG, EMG, different biosignals. And by studying these signals, we can figure out that how these aspects of intelligence can become sharpened, right? Somebody says you are very intelligent, right? So how are you intelligent? Then I don't know whether you people have read Mahabharata or not. You see in Mahabharata, Yudhishthira Maharaj will always realize that if certain things are happening, that means he will exhibit some doubt and he would raise his doubt because there must be some danger. So only a person of intelligence, like suppose you are traveling in a train and somebody immediately comes and be friends with you, speaks very sweet word, and you are not intelligent. You are swayed, and by the time you realize you have been pickpocketed. That's because you are not at all intelligent. So these are the things. So that is why one kind of research people can always do. You subject people to mode of goodness more and more and more, and you see their biomarkers in terms of these properties like doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory, and sleep. So these are all different biomarkers, and you can see whether they are sharpened or they are dispersing in nature. So these things we can study. So this is very, very important aspect of cognitive science. Okay, so we talked about mind. Did we talk about mind property? No. So no. So first, okay. Egoism in the mode of passion produces two kinds of senses: the senses for acquiring knowledge and senses of action. Senses of action depend on the vital energy. Senses for acquiring knowledge depend on intelligence. So egoism in the mode of passion produces two kinds of senses. And so let's go to next. When egoism in ignorance is agitated by the sex energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the subtle element sound is manifested, and from sound comes ethereal sky and sense of hearing. So as I told you, there are identity, first comes false identity into creation. This creation, people want to know how creation has taken place, right? So here is, please hear how creation has taken place. The first element that was created is false identity. And this false identity was imbued with three modes. One is in mode of passion, ignorance, and goodness. So the false identity in mode of goodness was transformed to mind. How that happened, don't ask me. You have to ask Krishna for that. But that's how mind came into picture. So that is, one will now become many. One element, that is the false ego, that would become many now. So we talked about 24 elements. I will not take the time because time is beyond all this. So 24 elements. So this one element, false ego, will become 24 elements. Okay. So this is what we have to recognize. And so false ego in mode of goodness transformed to mind, false ego in mode of passion got transformed to intelligence, and false ego in mode of ignorance got transformed to sound. And sound is the basis for this gross manifest world. And that is why anybody who wants to do Bhagvat Sankhya research, the most fascinating element to study is sound. And this sound has four categories: Vaikhari, Madhyama, Pashyanti, and Para. And this is where we have to sit down. Anybody who wants to work, as I told you, intelligence, there are certain biomarkers, and that also can be studied. But as far as the manipulation of this material energy is concerned, finally that is done through sound. And this is a very, very profound subject matter. Persons who are learned and who have true knowledge define sound as that which conveys the idea of an object, indicates the presence of a speaker screened from our view, and constitutes a subtle form of ether. So what we saw, sound is the information, okay? And one thing in Bhagavad Sankhya you will see, there are three things. One is information. Information requires a carrier, and information needs to be perceived. Together, they make one unit of cognitive information. So that is sound, ether, and sense of hearing. Together, they make a semantic sound, I would say the element of semantic sound. This is a very profound subject, but just hear now, because more you hear, more you get purified, and if you are really, it excites you, then you will hanker for this knowledge, and more you go through this knowledge, and you will be guided in the right path. So the activities and characteristics of ethereal element can be observed as accommodation for the room for the external and internal existence of all living entities, namely the field of activities, the vital air, the senses, and the mind. From the ethereal existence, which evolves from the sound, the next transformation takes place under the impulse of time, under the subtle element touch, and hence the air, the sense of touch become prominent. So you see that moment the element comes, that element requires its carrier and the sense of perception. And together they are one element. So simultaneously one and different. Right? So this is something we have to understand. So touch needs air. So it's air. When I say don't try to understand air the way you understand air in the scientific vocabulary. No, that's not the air here talks about. So, touch, air, and sense of touch together they create one semantic touch element. Because if touch is there, unless it is perceived, it is no more touch. So simultaneously they manifest. Softness and hardness, cold and heat are the distinguishing attribute of touch, which is characterized as the subtle form of air. Okay. The actions of air is exhibited in movement, mixing, allowing approach to the objects of sound and other sense perception, and providing for the proper functioning for all other senses. By interaction of the air and the sensation of touch, one receives different forms according to destiny. So you see, it is touch that gives to form, right? Man and woman, they unite and there are offspring. There is pollination in the plants and there are offspring. There are seeds and fruits, flowers and seed, and then seed would give rise to more. So different forms. So, and similarly, these touch principle gives rise to seed, touch principle gives rise to embryonic seed or egg. In different ways they give rise and the forms come. So touch is subtler than the form. From there you can understand. Sound, it is the subtlest from these element. Sound is most subtle. And grosser to sound is touch. Grosser to sound is the form. So you see that you look at the creation, the most subtler form of creation, creative object is false ego. And the false ego in mode of ignorance gave rise to sound. Sound gave rise to touch. Touch gives rise to form, right? So once form comes, it requires a space to reside, and that is fire. And the sense of perception, that is I. Together they form one semantic element of form. My dear mother, the characteristics. So that means what you see here, there is an observer. What is that observer? Observer is the sense of seeing. That is I. And object of that is the form. And carrier of that is the fire. And we can say in a gross way, they are all fire. Okay. So this is something that we always have to understand, how three together make one semantic element or complete element. My dear mother, the characteristics of form are understood by dimension, quality, and individuality. The form of fire is appreciated by its effulgence. Fire is appreciated by its light, by its ability to cook, to digest, to destroy cold, to evaporate, to give rise to hunger, thirst, eating, and drinking. By the interaction of fire and the visual sensation, the subtle element taste evolves under a superior arrangement. And from taste, water is produced, and the tongue, which perceives the taste, is also manifested. So you see that how creation is evolving from false identity down to the grossest form of exploitation. Although originally one taste becomes manifold as astringent, sweet, bitter, pungent, sour, and salty due to contact with other substances. The characteristics of water are exhibited by the moistening other substances, coagulating various mixtures, causing satisfaction, maintaining life, suffering things, driving away heat, incessantly supplying itself to reservoir of water, and refreshing by slaking thirst. Due to interaction of water with the taste perception, the subtle element odor evolves under superior arrangement. Hence, the earth and the olfactory sense by which we can variously experience the aroma of earth become manifest. Odor, although one, becomes many as mixed, offensive, fragrant, mild, strong, acidic, and so on according to the proportion of associated substance. The characteristics of the function of earth can be perceived by modeling form of Supreme Brahman, by constructing places of residence, by preparing pots to contain water, etc. In other words, the earth is the place of sustenance for all elements. The sense whose object of perception is sound is called the auditory sense, and that whose object of perception is touch is called tactile sense. The sense whose object of perception is form, the distinctive characteristic of fire is the sense of sight. The sense whose object of perception is taste, the distinctive characteristic of water is known as sense of taste. Finally, the sense whose object of perception is odor, the distinctive characteristic of earth is called the sense of smell. Since the cause exists in its effect as well, the characteristic of former are observed in the latter. That is why the peculiarities of all elements exist in the earth alone. So now you see the false ego is the sitting place of all elements. So false ego is the resting place for the sound. Sound is the resting place of touch. Touch is the resting place for form. And form is a resting place for taste, and taste is a resting for smell. So in other way, I can say false ego, resting place for ether, ether resting place for air, air is the resting place for fire, fire is the resting place for water, water is the resting place for earth. So this is how the creation, but counterintuitively it appears earth is the resting place for everything, right? So this is what you see, and that's actually illusory truth. Since the cause exists in its effect as well, the characteristic of former are observed in the latter. That is why the peculiarity of all elements exists in earth alone. When all these elements were unmixed, the Supreme Personality God at the origin of creation, along with time, work, and the qualities of modes of material nature, entered into the universe with total material energy in 7 divisions. From these 7 principles roused into activity, united by the presence of Lord, an unintelligent egg arose from which appeared the celebrated cosmic being. And this cosmic being, what we are talking about, is the seed form of each individual universe. This universal egg, or the universe in the shape of an egg, is called manifestation of material energy. Its layers of water, air, fire, sky, ego, and mahatattva increase in thickness one after another. Each layer is 10 times bigger than the previous one, and the final outside layer is covered by pradhan. Within this egg is the universal form of Lord Hari, of whose body the 14 planetary systems are parts. So, just like a single cell grows to become an embryo within the womb, and that embryo, when comes out, further grows and takes the shape of a human being or a plant or a bird or an animal, similarly, this universal expansion of the Supreme Lord, when he enters into this primordial egg, then it expands and slowly it becomes the way it is now existing in the form of 14 planetary systems. As I have told you that our universe age is 50, and so you can easily recognize that this universe was very tiny in the beginning and expanded, and now this is its shape. And after some time, the whole process would start dwindling, right? After age of 50, you see every human being experiences dwindling aspect of his body. So the universe now is 50-year-old, and soon it will go through this status of dwindling as well. And this is the truth of everything that exists. So first expansion, like I grew, from a seed I grew, became a big plant, a human being. But after some time, people may ask why I'm not growing, because that's what it is. That's the laws of nature. Why you don't grow? Why you grow only up to 7 feet, 8 feet? Why not 20 feet, 100 feet? How? So these are the things that are based on certain, universal principle, so when I say age, my age is 100. That is an experiential time. We have talked about what is experiential time, right? When I'm a small boy, 5-year-old has no meaning. But 5-year-old boy has meaning. The innocence in him, okay, the sheer ignorance in him about the world. That is 5-year-old. Otherwise, 5-year has no meaning. Now, when I say I'm 20-year-old, the youthness, the freshness of youth in that, that is something that when one has crossed the youth, one can appreciate what it is. So that is called experiential time. Experiential time is not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 100. It has no meaning. Somebody says, I'm 50. That means at the age of 50, if you are in Vedic civilization, you start becoming active in terms of getting detached from one aspect of creation to another aspect of creation. The process of detachment with all seriousness must start when you are 50, because things are going to dwindle. So same thing also with this universe. So these are things that we have to hear, internalize, and we must get ready to appreciate, because once you have this knowledge, then the process of liberation becomes very easy. The freedom from ignorance becomes very easy. Okay, what time it is now? 12:10. So how long we can continue? Prem Kishore Prabhu, how long we can continue?
Prabhuji, it is so interesting that I think we can continue for hours and hours, but I think still it is so engrossing.
If people are enjoying, I don't know. I don't know whether people are sleeping or
No. It is, you can ask, everyone is so hooked on. So I'm seeing that for last 1 hour, 70 people are hearing. So everyone is so enjoying because this is something eye-opening. So I think another 10 minutes we can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, so where I was, yes. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Virata Purusa, situated himself in that golden egg, which was lying on the water. He divided it into many departments. First of all, a mouth appeared in him, and then came forth the organ of speech. With it, the god of fire, the deity who presides over that organ. Then a pair of nostrils appeared, and in them appeared the olfactory sense as well as prana, or the vital air. So the universal expansion, the way it would happen from that universal egg is being described now. In the wake of olfactory sense came the wind god, who presided over that sense. Thereafter, a pair of eyes appeared in the universal form. In them, the sense of sight. In the wake of this sense came the sun god, who presided over it. Next, there appeared in him a pair of ears. In them, the auditory sense. In its wake, the Digdevatas, the deities who preside over the directions. Then the universal form of the Lord, the Virata Purusa, manifested his skin. Thereupon the hair, mustache, beard appeared. After this, all the herbs and rocks become manifest, and then his genitals also appeared. After this, semen, the faculty of procreation, and the god who presides over the water appeared. Next appeared an anus, and then the organ of defecation, and thereupon the god of death, who is feared throughout the universe. Thereafter, two hands of universal form of Lord become manifested. With them, the power of grasping and dropping things, and after that, Lord Indra appeared. Next, the legs became manifested. With them, the process of movement, and after that, Lord Vishnu appeared. I'm going a little fast because I just want to give a concluding thing on this. And when the demigods and presiding deities of the various senses were thus manifested, they wanted to wake their origin of appearance. But upon failing to do so, they re-entered the body of Virata Purusa, one after another, in order to wake him up. The god of fire entered his mouth with the organ of speech, but the Virata Purusa could not be aroused. Then the god of wind entered his nostril with the sense of smell, but still the Virata Purusa refused to be awakened. So what is being talked about here? Because it is not very easy to digest or internalize now. Let me tell you, the creation is done, right? Everything is done. The hand is there. So like, for example, there is a human being like I in a child form. I manifested, but I am stand still. Nothing is happening. Neither I am able to speak, nor I am able to move my hand. And this exactly happened in the beginning of creation. And then the super soul has to enter into every aspect of creation for them to become animated. That is the whole thing. So finally, the entire animation is there because of super soul, all pervading nature of the super soul. He pervades every aspects of this universal creation, universal manifestation. And that is why the sun shines, moon shines, the wind blows, and the universal affairs, they take place. Okay, so this is the whole expression, and I just however, when the inner control or the deity of presiding over consciousness entered the heart with the reason, at that very moment, the cosmic being arose from the causal water. So this is a little, I have to make some animation to explain to you. Maybe I will create an animation on this, and when I'm ready, I will tell Prem Kisar Prabhu, and then I'll explain to you how this actually happens. When a man is sleeping, all his material assets, namely the vital energy, the senses for recording knowledge, the senses for working the mind and intelligence cannot arouse him. He can be aroused only when the super soul helps him. You sleep, who makes you wake up? It is super soul. Okay? Therefore, through devotion, detachment, and advancement in spiritual knowledge, acquired through concentrated devotional service, one should contemplate that super soul as present in this very body, although simultaneously apart from it. Okay? So, okay, some of the things that we can now take home, Sankhya elements and periodic table. Like what is periodic table? Hydrogen, helium, sodium, potassium, silver are all defined by atomic number and electronic configuration. These are all syntactic elements. Even the order and other qualitative properties are not embedded into their description. Whereas Sankhya elements are defined by their purpose and information they carry. The semantic. So the elements that we have created is syntactic. Elements that are being described in Sankhya, Bhagavad Sankhya, is semantic. Okay, so the dress that I have is a conscious dress. Although it is made up of matter, but it is a conscious dress. What is meaning of conscious? This is the false consciousness. There are two consciousness. One is pure consciousness represented by you, me, in the pure form as Jiva. And there is supreme consciousness, that is the all-pervading aspect of the absolute truth. And then there is false consciousness, and that makes up a dress and makes the living entity, deluding soul, to feel it has its identity separate from the absolute consciousness. Right? So unless we try to understand this conscious dress, although they are temporary, this consciousness is temporary in the sense this only rests for as long as this body is there, right? And then it merges into its original unmanifest form. So there is Sankhya element, there is periodic table, and there is distinction here, right? So I wanted to make so many points here, like here subtle element ether carries sound, an idea of particular information. This ether is different from physics ether. In Mridanga beats, the source is present. In Srila Prabhupada's voice, Srila Prabhupada is present. This is not understood. Like now I am speaking, just hearing me, you can feel me, right? When we hear Prabhupada's voice, we feel the presence of Prabhupada as a person. So these are not understood in science because science is still syntactic. It's highly impersonal. Not only it is impersonal, it is syntactic impersonal. If it is semantic impersonal also, we can make some sense out of it. I don't want to go in details of this science that we can do kind of research because this part would require a lot of deliberation. I think that I will do injustice if I go to
you can just touch upon it, sir. Just to people will have some idea. You can just touch upon the idea.
Then this will take time, you see. See, I just want to tell you, in science, we have only created two objects. One is particle, the other is wave. And that particle also is a syntactic particle. And wave is also syntactic wave. And this is the bizarre state of the current science. I'm not trying to you know, uh, look down upon the scientific endeavor. All that I'm saying, why this state is there, the first mistake in science is that we didn't realize the importance of mode of goodness in scientific unraveling. And because of that, science is caught in ignorance. So, in immediate contribution to science can be, can I define a semantic particle and a semantic wave? This has to be the first contribution. Just like you know, even I didn't focus on the sound part, right? The people think sound is simply caused by compression or rarefaction of air molecules. This is really ridiculous. What is sound is completely different, and that requires in depth, because it is the sound that is the source of touch, and touch is the source of fire. So you can imagine, you know, I always told in the beginning, the first class in Bhagvat Sankhya, source matters. Source matters. So what kind of source? Like, for example, cow dung produces fire. Wood also produces fire. Cooking gas also produces fire. Electricity also produces fire. But then they are imbued with a different level of mode. So you cook in cow dung, there is mode of goodness. And people can do this kind of research, particularly those who are working in chemistry, right? And you can see that whether by cooking in the fire produced from the source of mode of goodness, your food quality should be natural in mode of goodness. These are things. Now I give this example to all of you, how science should progress to the next level. Like I give the example of my chemistry lab examination. In chemistry lab examination, in our intermediate science, when we did the lab exam, final lab exam, so we are given a salt, and we have to identify the salt. One is that you have to do certain syntactic experiment, and finally you say this is hydrogen chloride, or sodium chloride, or potassium permanganate. So you can do that, and there the lab assistant, he puts this salt in his tongue and says this is potassium permanganate or hydrogen chloride. Can we take the science? This is called semantic. What this lab assistant did is semantic science. Can we take our science to that level? Okay, that means we have to create in matter, right? These kind of semantic elements, these kind of semantic, just like, you know, my living body has these elements, and they are able to immediately distinguish between different kind of salt. Similarly, I have to create these kind of material elements, and these material element as observer can tell me directly whether this food is in mode of goodness, food is in mode of passion, food is in mode of ignorance. So these are the things that we need to do. A very dedicated team should sit down, and we have to figure out which one we can do fast. And depending on the background, we have to identify the problem, and they have to be dedicated to that problem. And any Bhagavad Sankhya research means you have to be situated in mode of goodness, then only you can do it. Okay, So, okay, so I think I should stop here. There are so many things that I have literally not gone to different aspects of scientific content in this chapter. So we will wait for another opportunity to speak. But thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so Hare Krishna. So it's a wonderful, engrossing lecture by Professor Behra, and we will definitely have another session because a lot many things I think are still need to be explored. So after this cosmology and this, we'll have one or two session. So as per the time availability of sir, and so Jyotishar Prabhu. So before starting the questions, can you please present? I'll again just because everyone is here. So we are having our next webinar series on demystifying Vedic cosmology, a new vision of the cosmos, starting from 7th of February, 7th, 14th, and 21st by Dr. Mauricio Garrido from Florida. So, defining Bhagavatam model of the universe, then decoding the map of Bhumandala and vertical distances, size of universe, and nature of stars. And all this is coming from, like Professor Behra was reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto. So this is based on the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the same. So I'll request everyone to please join this seminar, and please be careful that this is starting. This will be at 5:30 p.m. Okay. Next slide. Okay, then we will have our next on 30th. We will have art and science of meditation on 28th of February. Next. Then we will have science and religion, conflict, cooperation, and coexistence on 7th of March, problems of scientific materialism, and 14th of March, religious implications of Big Bang cosmology by Professor Gopal Gupta from USA. Okay, next. And then we will have a six-session series on the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, practical theology and philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. We'll have scientific perspectives, understanding of five fundamental elements of spiritual truths, sociological and management lessons, historical perspective, comparative theology, and practical applications in everyday life. Starting from 21st of March to 28th of April. So next 3 months, wonderful seminar series are coming up in ISS. So request everyone to be take you know इनका फायदा उठाएं हम all these series and enrich our life with the wonderful knowledge of shastras and scriptures. Okay, now we'll start the question answer session. So the first question, there were a lot of questions were asked by people, so I will just take few of them. Okay, one of the question is coming up is I think lot devotees are also asking a lot of questions. Okay, so I'll start from the first question. Who okay, sir. So this is Chiranjit Roy. He is asking, are the false ego dress that come out of Mahatattva?
Can you repeat the question again?
The question is, I'm also a little bit confused. So I'm reading whatever is written. Are false ego dress that come out of Mahatattva? I think he mean to say that false ego is coming from Mahatattva or not.
Yeah, Mahatattva. You see, the first pradhan is the is the neutral state of unmanifest material nature, and in Mahatattva, the living entities have been impregnated. So Mahatattva, the modes have taken has become, it is no more in equilibrium state. So Mahatattva and Pradhan, the distinction is the three modes have started competing in Mahatattva, where in Pradhan they are neutral. And that's when the identity manifested. So that's why in Mahatattva, the whole process of creation starts when material energy it gets transformed to Mahatattva from Pradhan.
Okay. So the another question is by Tirumurti. He's asking, by chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, can mind be connected to Lord Aniruddha or any other method?
Obviously, in any manner, in using mind, you can do any kind of devotional service to Krishna, not only chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. We have that example of a Brahmana, how he was offering everything in the mind, a sweet kheer. He was preparing and in the mind, and his finger got burnt because when he wanted to see whether the sweet that has been prepared is hot or cold, because you normally offer everything not very hot to the Lord so that Lord appreciates what you have cooked. So yes, you can connect mind to Aniruddha through Hare Krishna Mahamantra, no issue.
Okay. Okay. Another question by Dr. Shashank Srivastav. In the chariot example, the intelligence is said to be higher than mind. So why goodness gives rise to mind and passion gives rise to intelligence? Are we talking about different kinds of intelligence at two places?
No. Intelligence, see, you have to look at, you don't ask question why here. Process of creation is causeless. If this process of creation would not have been there, then we would have been locked, because we are given freedom, and that is why process of creation happened. And this is a causeless process because we want to enjoy freedom separate from Krishna. You can't ask why here. The way it has happened, it has happened. The beauty is that mind is the only element in mode of goodness in our body. That is why if you keep mind in mode of goodness, mind is your best friend. And if you condition the mind in mode of ignorance and passion, then your mind is your worst enemy. That is why Srila Prabhupada in many lectures, he says, the fundamental shape of sin is mode of passion and ignorance. Ignorance, so tamas, rajas, tamas, rajas, tamas, rajas. So as a devotee, the first thing we have to recognize what is tamas, what is rajas, how to stay away from tamas and rajas. And this is what I have been emphasizing again and again. And your point is, yes, intelligence is superior to mind, elemental wise, but you have to recognize here that your false ego has three categories. False ego in mode of ignorance, false ego in mode of passion, false ego mode of goodness. So false ego in mode of goodness got transformed into mind. And false ego in mode of passion, but they are same false ego, got intelligence. So, but you must realize this intelligence is subservient to mind, although it is subtler than the mind, but subservient to mind. What is controlling mind is not the material element intelligence, it is spiritual intelligence. That is why by hearing, you gain spiritual intelligence. So para sound gives you spiritual intelligence. And that spiritual intelligence guides the mind. Whereas material intelligence follows the mind. Whatever mind desires, material intelligence tries to actualize it.
Okay. So next question is, can semantic objects be described objectively? I
Yes.
mean, without reference to external observer.
Yeah. It can be described because in this 25th chapter of 3rd canto, Kardama Muni has created the artificial swan there as real as the real swan. So it has been created. Yes.
So that means we can create conscious machines.
We can create conscious machine, correct.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so the next question is by Shankar Das. Oh, okay. Is there any books available or slides website where we can read or refer these knowledge in detail?
Yeah, we that is why we want to establish a scientific institute in possibly Gurukul, or we are looking for some avenue where those who are interested, try to understand wherever you are. If you sit there, you can't do this research. To do this research, you have to come to a place, remain in mode of goodness, dedicate your life. And you must be willing to, at least you say that I will give 5 years to this research, then you will get something. Otherwise, it's nice, but that is why all our yogis, they went to the jungle and did the science. Why didn't stay in the cities? So we are not saying that you have to go to the Himalayan cave, but at least we should have like-minded people coming and creating an atmosphere of goodness, and then making a commitment that let us pursue this science for the upliftment of the humanity.
Yes. So the question, another question is coming from Siddharth Tiwari. He's asking, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, sir, something we take wrong decision for temporary pleasure, knowing its consequences is bad. So which element is driving us to take that decision and how we can overcome it?
Tamas. Ignorance. You have to recognize what is mode of ignorance, what is mode of passion. And we need to remain light years away from this ignorance and passion. Then only we can see things as they are. Otherwise, it is very difficult.
Okay.
Sense
So
objects are tanmatras. Tanmatras, they are very deluding, and they cause all kind of distress. So all genuine scientists, they must have innate ability to remain unaffected by these tanmatras. Then only they can do research.
Okay. So another question is coming from Subhasini. But sir, for a ignorant person, his ignorance is his knowledge. How to make him aware of his ignorance?
How to somehow, the point is that somehow you have to bring people into mode of goodness. So normally people, when they somehow land in ISKCON temple, the atmosphere within ISKCON temple is so mode of goodness. Nice deities, nice sringara, the fragrant flower garlands, the nice charanamrita, nice prasadam. So being exposed to such environment more and more, creating outreach program in distant places with mode of goodness, and engaging them in conversation, you can, there are such efforts have to be done so that people in mode of ignorance can be transformed.
Is chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra can bring us to mode of goodness?
Yes, chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra is superior to mode of goodness, but my point is its effect is there. Its effect will be felt whether you are in mode of ignorance, mode of passion, or mode of goodness. So, if you reside in mode of passion mostly, while chanting, you will sleep, right? And if you are in mode of passion and you are chanting, you'll be distracted during chanting. Only when you stay in mode of goodness and you chant, you remain attentive and focused. So, and of course, when you have transcended three modes of material nature, you don't need even a Bhagavad Sankhya, you are already liberated.
So after hearing your lecture, people have started feeling uneasy with their own knowledge. So one participant is asking, so whenever terms related to normal science is uttered, I picturize that only. It is difficult for me to unlearn what I learned and relearn. So how do I unlearn and relearn now?
No, the Prabhupada made a point very clear that one of the good aspect of modern science is that modern science didn't take, like for example, this you see a house, right? It is made up of brick wall, iron pillars, and so many things. A layman would like to see, how nice is pillar, how nice is brick wall, whether finishing is good or not. Whereas a scientist, he doesn't see the pillars and bricks and nicety of the house. He sees, when he sees the wall, he sees the dancing molecules. So a scientific bent of mind is always looking for the subtler truth behind the gross experience. So every scientific endeavor assumes there is a subtler structure behind the gross experience. Whereas the naive people, they are satisfied with the gross experience. Anybody who's satisfied with the gross experience cannot become a scientist. Okay, so you must look for reason. So beyond or underlying your gross experience, there is a subtle structure. So that is what science is telling. So if you are really trained in scientific way, then you would appreciate Bhagavad Sankhya better. It is nothing to be unlearning. All that you do is, first you take yourself back to mode of goodness. And then everything is there, and finally, knowledge is revealed. It is not that I will spoon feed you and you will understand. No. Knowledge is ultimately revealed to each one of us. So all that we do is that we guide everyone to become a proper patra. Patra means the container which is suitable to accept this knowledge. So I don't think that if you have a scientific mind, you will surely do well. You don't have a scientific mind, you better chant Hare Krishna and don't worry. And
Okay,
it
so
is
the
not
same.
necessary that everybody should have a scientific mind. It's not necessary.
The same feelings are shared by Ankit Govind, I think, and you have answered that question very nicely. So another question is coming that in Bhagavad Sankhya, where do we fit in gravitational field and time? I think time you already told, but where do we put gravitational field?
Yeah. Uh, the that would require more introspection. As of now, I will not give a comment on this because the law of gravitation is very gross in comparison to the why the Earth is floating, or the planetary systems appear to be floating. So that requires a profound idea of how the grosser form of energy they situate themselves in subtler form of energy. So this requires certain amount of understanding. So I don't think that we have to try to create a one-to-one correspondence between what the science has taught us. You try to understand the law of gravitation that you are learning, that Newton talked about. It was superseded by Einstein's theory of relativity, or space-time continuum. So the point is, before Einstein gave the theory, or Newton gave the theory, the systems are already existing. By what process everything is existing the way they are existing is not really important for us. What is important is to find relationship of each element to the whole. So that relationship we need to talk in this new science, or Bhagavad Sankhya. If you understand that relationship, then everything will be understood slowly. So in the beginning, I had told you that everything that you can put into the basket, you know, you don't know, knowable, not knowable, comprehensible, incomprehensible, everything put. So together, that is the big basket. And every element in that big basket has a relationship. And that relationship we have to unravel. And that is the purpose of Bhagavad Sankhya. I think we should stop here.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, Jyoti.
Dr. Sir, just one thing I just wanted to make clear that, am I audible, sir?
Yeah, I'm hearing.
Okay, thank you. Actually, is it very important, or I should ask this way, that what is more important, to know the science of spirituality, that is the reasons why, who is God, and I mean all the, you can say, the knowledge of the scriptures, or it is just to simply chant the name of Hari? What is more important, and means on what thing I should focus or give my attention to, or put my energies into? Please make it clear to me.
Okay, I understood you. You should back up your own ability in the service to Krishna. Okay. Why we want to do science? We want to do science not because we want to become a scientist. We want to do science because by that process, we can separate ourselves from ignorance.
Okay.
That is what is the Bhagavad Sankhya. And that is you look at the, if you see my slides there, the question that the beginning, the Devahuti asked this question, please tell me the God and his energy in the way the energy related to God in the process of creation. So anything that we want to study such that we establish our relations with the absolute truth. So what Bhagavad Sankhya is doing, it is establishing a relationship with the elemental material elements to the absolute truth. So by that process, one can also be liberated. So you say that you don't want that, you are satisfied simply chanting Hare Krishna and becoming liberated, it's fine. Okay.
Doctor,
So,
because is it not more important that we practice what is the essence of all the Vedas? That is you should always remember Krishna, the Almighty, instead of, I mean, I should not say the waste of time, but it will take, I mean, more time. Suppose I don't have that much of time. So what should I give my preference? Should I give my preference to chanting and after that the reading part, or first I should know each
no,
and everything?
unless you have a scientific temperament, you are not be able to appreciate the process.
Okay.
Unless you have a scientific temperament, you will not be able to appreciate how to deal with Bhagavad Sankhya. There are so many scientists out there.
Yeah.
And they want to understand things using their nature.
Mhm.
See, you cannot violate your nature. A
Pardon?
person who has a scientific temperament,
Mhm.
he has to be given science.
Of course.
And Bhagavad Sankhya is a science for them. There are people, they are asking this question, what is the basic building block of this universe?
Mm.
See, the world is not there. Otherwise, why, with all its limitation, we have to give a lot of credit to modern science because it took away the whole propensity of eating, mating, sleeping, and defending to ask important questions. People wanted to know what is the outer space, the limit of the sky. These are all things that the scientific mind can explore. So Krishna always says that Swadharme nidhanam sreya paro dharma bhayavaha. So if you have certain nature that is given to you and you try to suppress that nature, that would create violence within you. So if your nature is that of an intellectual, and that is why in Srimad Bhagavatam, everything is there. Those who want to have scientific exploration, science is there. Okay, those who want, and you see that from Canto 1 to Canto 9, so many topics are jam-packed. It is not only, and only in 10th canto we saw that Krishna's intimate pastimes are described. And so the process of creation, the Vedic cosmology, descending of Ganga onto this universe, the concept of time, the Sankhya philosophy, everything is there. So Bhagavatam is not for only you or me, it is for everyone. Okay? And I'm not saying that everybody must learn Bhagavad Sankhya to become a devotee of Krishna, not necessary. Okay? But if somebody is able to explain Bhagavad Sankhya properly, Vedic cosmology properly, then we are bringing glory to our literature. Okay?
Yes, yes. Thank
Okay,
you so
so
much.
wonderful question answer session. We'll stop here. Just one last question from my side. So, in case the Bhagavad people understand, devotees understand Bhagavad Sankhya, and in future, by understanding that science, we are able to create conscious machines, and probably because the science will take that direction. Because then, in that case, what would be the future of the world, because we will not be able to differentiate. How will we differentiate it's a machine or it's a human? Because both seems conscious.
My point is that by building conscious machine, people don't even understand what is the difference between a living body and a dead body now.
Mm.
So once you build a conscious machine, people will start even thinking about what is the distinction between conscious machine and the soul proper. So
Okay.
you are breaking one barrier of ignorance by creating conscious machine, but that is the temporary, but that conscious machine is built out of pure matter. So when your understanding of matter is so good, then you develop better capacity to argue in favor of an eternal soul.
Right.
And you see that the level of ignorance must be crushed. Unfortunately, people even don't understand the consciousness that is pervading our body, and we take it for real. If people know how to build a conscious machine, isn't it, we will minimize the level of lust, greed, anger, and so forth, because our machines will become better than
Humans.
humans.
Yeah.
So it will lead to environmental friendly technology, more synergetic view of the creation, respect for all living entities, appreciating there are different living creatures who are in mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance, and giving emphasis to those who are in mode of goodness. The cows, bees, the microbes, they will get a lot of empathy from the people. So I think there is enormous amount of possibilities that we can see. For example, if you want to see for next 10,000 years a very wonderful Krishna conscious society, then we need to have a good environment in the society, which we don't have now. It's mostly tamas and rajas.
Yes, understood, Prabhuji. Okay, so we'll stop now. Although the people are still asking questions.
Prabhuji,
Yeah.
I'm asking a little question, very foolish question. Give me a little opportunity, Prabhuji.
Okay,
This is Ram.
last question. Yes, last question, please.
Prabhuji, the Ashtanga Yoga and Sankhya Yoga, are these two non-different or different?
Can you again repeat Ashtanga Yoga?
And the Sankhya Yoga, whose pretext you are taking from?
The Sankhya Yoga that is given in Srimad Bhagavatam is non-different from Bhakti Yoga. The Sankhya Yoga, in as I described to you, will make you realize Krishna face to face. Whereas Ashtanga Yoga will keep you as an impersonal, and will make you realize the Paramatma aspect of the absolute truth. But the danger of that Ashtanga Yoga is that you will always feel that you are the same Paramatma. So you will annihilate Atma into Paramatma, and you'll assume that position of Paramatma. So that is one of the greatest danger of Ashtanga Yoga in Kali Yuga. That is why Prabhupada again and again in Bhagavad Gita, he talked about for Kali Yuga 3 yoga system: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Okay, so we will stop here, and we thank Professor Laxmidhar Bahera for the wonderful question answer session, and still 50 participants are listening and hooked on to the conversation. wonderful, that shows the potential of Professor Behera, and the command and the spiritual potency he carries, and the wonderful explanation. So we again thank you, Prabhuji, for the wonderful series. And definitely, we'll again request Professor Behera to give his time for future sessions. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you.